I'm Emily. Welcome to Scars and Stories. If you like storytime vibes, hit subscribe and let's dive in together.
The message came in the middle of the night. Don't wait up, toningt. I'm with someone better. He didn't cry, he didn't beg. Just one action, changing the locks. A few weeks later, the betrayer was trembling, desperately pounding on the door. But the house was now locked tight, and so was the love he had once given her. What truly happened? How could a man who had once loved so deeply remain so composed? And what would finally make the betrayer pay? Today, let's dive into Dylan's heartbreaking story with me, Emily, and I promise the twists will surprise you. Dylan has always been a man who believes in building slowly and steadily. He worked as an IT consultant, a demanding job that required long hours but offered stability and security for the future he dreamed of. He wasn't flashy. He didn't spend weekends chasing parties or fleeting thrills. Instead, he saved diligently, tended to the small house his father had left him, and nurtured visions of a peaceful life filled with faith, laughter, and lasting love. Brooklyn, on the other hand, was everything he thought he needed to balance his life. She was vivacious, quick to laugh, and beautiful in a way that made people turn their heads when she entered a room. When they first met at a friend's barbecue, she teased him about his reserved nature. "You look like the kind of guy who has everything planned 2 years ahead," she said with a smirk. Dylan had smiled shyly. "Maybe. I just think it's better to be prepared than caught off guard." At first, their differences seemed to complement each other perfectly. She brought color into his neatly ordered world, while he gave her stability she claimed she had always longed for. Brooklyn said she was tired of men who made promises but couldn't follow through, and she admired Dylan's steady hand and responsible nature. At least, that's what he believed. For the first 2 years, things seemed perfect. They traveled when they could afford it, bought furniture for the house, and Dylan thought they were building a future together. He was careful with money, but not stingy. Every birthday, every anniversary, he made sure she felt special. Flowers, dinners, little surprises, tucked into her bag before work. Brooklyn, in return, showered him with affection and often told her friends, "Dylan is the kind of man every woman dreams of marrying." But somewhere in the 3rd year, subtle changes crept in. Brooklyn started staying out late, claiming work events or girls' nights. Her phone, once casually left on the counter, was now always face down. When Dylan asked her about it, she would laugh and accuse him of being paranoid. "You work too much, babe." "Maybe you just miss me," she'd say, running her fingers through his hair in a way that always disarmed him. Dylan wanted to believe her. After all, hadn't she chosen him when she could have had anyone else? Still, the unease grew. He noticed the faint smell of cologne that wasn't his on her clothes once. Another time, he found a receipt for a dinner for 2 in her purse, but when he asked, she waved it off as a client meeting. The breaking point came one Thursday night. Dylan had been working late, trying to finish a project. Around midnight, he texted Brooklyn, telling her not to wait up. Her reply was what shattered everything. "Don't stay up late waiting. I'm with someone better." Dylan stared at the message, his chest tightening, his fingers numb. He read it again, hoping it was some cruel joke, some mistake. But when he called, the phone went straight to voicemail. The next morning, she strolled in, wearing yesterday's clothes, humming to herself like nothing was wrong. Dylan didn't confront her immediately. He had learned long ago that reacting in anger only gave away your power. Instead, he greeted her with calm silence. Brooklyn smirked when she saw him. "Don't look at me like that. You knew I wasn't going to settle for a life of spreadsheets and overtime forever." Dylan's heart broke, but his mind sharpened. "So you're saying you found someone better?" he asked quietly. She tilted her head, almost proud. "Yes, someone who knows how to live, not just plan. Maybe you should thank me for not wasting more of your time." That night, after she fell asleep in their bed, as if she hadn't just stabbed him with words, Dylan got up and started preparing. He gathered every key she had, every document, every item she had left scattered in the house. He didn't shout, he didn't weep, he simply acted. He changed the locks the very next day. He transferred money from their shared account into one solely under his name, leaving only what she had personally contributed. He contacted the utility companies and removed her from the bills. Quietly, methodically, he erased her from the life they had built. Brooklyn didn't notice right away. For a week, she floated in and out, dismissive and smug, spending more time away than home. Dylan let her. He wanted her to think she had won. He wanted her to feel untouchable. The twist came the night she returned, suitcase in hand, makeup smeared from tears. Apparently, the better man she had run to was married, and his wife had found out. She had been thrown out like trash, and suddenly, the stability Dylan provided seemed irresistible again. "Dylan," she sobbed, standing on the porch, "please just let me in. I made a mistake. You're the only one who ever truly cared about me." But when she reached for the door, her key didn't work. She jiggled it, tried again, her voice breaking. "Dylan, open the door, please." Inside, Dylan sat in the living room, the sound of her desperate pounding echoing through the house. He felt the ache of betrayal still burning in his chest. But he also felt something else, peace. He had taken back control. When he finally opened the door, he didn't speak at first. He simply looked at her, this woman who had laughed at his devotion, who had treated his love like a safety net. Brooklyn's mascara-streaked face lifted, her eyes full of false hope. "Thank you, I knew you wouldn't give up on me." Dylan shook his head slowly. "No, Brooklyn, I didn't give up on you. You gave up on us. And now you're just a stranger at my door." Her face twisted with shock, then fury. "You can't do this to me. I gave you the best years of my life." Dylan's voice was calm, steady. "And I gave you everything I had. The difference is I never betrayed you." Then he closed the door. She screamed, cursed, begged, but the locks held, and Dylan didn't open the door again. That was the night Brooklyn realized she had burned the only bridge that had ever truly carried her. And Dylan? He learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting or proving someone wrong. It's moving on, stronger, without them. But this story doesn't end here, because Brooklyn wasn't done trying to worm her way back into Dylan's life. And Dylan, patient as always, had already prepared for the battles still to come. Brooklyn didn't vanish after that night on the porch. People like her rarely do. They circle, waiting for weakness, hoping the person they betrayed will soften, will crack under loneliness. But Dylan didn't bend. He carried on with his life, steady and deliberate, even as she lurked on the edges, trying to regain ground she had thrown away. 3 days later, she showed up at his job. Dylan was in the middle of a client meeting when his phone buzzed with a message from the front desk. "There's a woman here asking for you. Says it's urgent. When he stepped into the lobby, there she was, dressed immaculately, makeup perfect this time, her suitcase nowhere in sight. She smiled sweetly, as if the scene at his doorstep had never happened. "Dylan," she cooed, "can we talk?" "Just 5 minutes, please?" His colleagues glanced curiously, but Dylan kept his composure. He escorted her outside, where her tone shifted quickly from soft to sharp. "Why are you treating me this way?" "After everything we've shared?" she demanded. Dylan looked at her calmly. "You made your choice. I accepted it. It's time you accept it too." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you're better than me now? You think you can just erase me like I'm nothing?" He didn't answer. He simply turned and walked back into the building, leaving her fuming on the sidewalk. That was Brooklyn's first attempt. The second came in the form of pity. She called Dylan late at night, her voice trembling. "I'm staying with a friend, but it's not working out. I don't have anywhere else to go. Please just let me crash on the couch for a few nights. You don't have to forgive me, just don't leave me out here like this." For a moment, Dylan's heart ached. He remembered the woman who used to curl up beside him on cold nights, who once laughed at his corny jokes. But then he remembered her smirk, her message. "I'm with someone better." He remembered the smugness when she thought she had won. "No," he said firmly, and hung up. By the third attempt, Brooklyn's tone had changed entirely. No more begging, no more sweet voices. Instead, she showed up at the house with venom dripping from every word. "You'll regret this, Dylan," she spat, pounding her fists on the locked door. "You think you're so strong, so perfect. But you're nothing without me. Nothing." Dylan didn't respond. He didn't even move from his chair in the living room. He simply let her rage echo into the night until she exhausted herself and left. But Brooklyn wasn't just angry, she was plotting. Weeks later, Dylan began receiving strange calls from mutual friends. Apparently, Brooklyn had been spinning stories about him, claiming he had been controlling, that he'd kept her trapped in the house, that she had left because he was emotionally abusive. The lies stung. For a moment, Dylan wondered if anyone would believe her. But he had lived his life with quiet integrity, and his friends knew him better than that. Still, he hated being dragged into her games. One evening, while having a beer with his closest friend Marcus, Dylan confessed, "I thought changing the locks would be enough. I thought she'd move on, but she's turning this into a war." Marcus shook his head. "She doesn't want you, Dan. She wants control. She can't stand that you're doing fine without her." Dylan nodded slowly. That's when an idea began to form. He wouldn't just defend himself from her chaos. He would set boundaries so firm she couldn't cross them again. The opportunity came sooner than he expected. Brooklyn showed up one Saturday morning, this time with tears in her eyes and papers in her hands. "Dylan, I know I messed up, but I still have things in the house. Clothes, jewelry, gifts from my mom. Please, just let me get them. I don't want to fight. I just want closure." Dylan studied her carefully. Her makeup was smudged, her hands trembling as she clutched the papers. She looked desperate, but he knew better than to take her at face value. Still, he agreed, but on his terms. "Fine," he said. "You'll get your things. But I'm going to box them up and leave them outside. You won't come into the house again." Brooklyn's eyes widened. "You can't treat me like a stranger." "I already told you," Dylan replied evenly. "That's exactly what you are now." True to his word, He spent the afternoon packing her belongings: clothes, shoes, the few trinkets she had left scattered in drawers. He stacked the boxes neatly on the porch and locked the door behind him. When Brooklyn arrived, she tried to act offended. "That's it? After years together, you toss me out like garbage on the curb?" Dylan's expression didn't change. Garbage is what people throw away when it no longer has value. These are your things. They still belong to you. Take them and leave. For a moment, she looked like she might explode, but then her lips curved into a smile. "You know what, Dylan? Keep pretending you're strong, but one day you'll realize you still love me. And when you come crawling back, I'll be the one closing the door." With that, she picked up the boxes and stormed off. Dylan knew she was bluffing. He had seen the way her eyes darted, the way her hands shook. She wasn't in control. She was unraveling. The unraveling became obvious weeks later when Brooklyn's so-called better man came knocking on Dylan's door. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Dylan heard the knock. He opened the door to find a tall, broad-shouldered man with a scowl carved into his face. "You Dylan?" the man growled. "Yes," Dylan replied cautiously. "I'm Thomas. The guy your ex tried to ruin my marriage with." His voice dripped with disdain. "She told me you were some pathetic loser, but I see now she just uses people until she bleeds them dry. You should know. She's been telling everyone you cheated on her. She's trying to make you the villain." Dylan listened silently as Thomas vented. He could see the anger in the man's eyes, but also the exhaustion. Brooklyn had left wreckage in his life too. "I don't know what you want me to say," Dylan finally replied, "but I'm done with her. She can tell whatever stories she wants. It doesn't change the truth." Thomas's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I believe you. Just watch your back. She's not done. Women like her never are." When the man left, Dylan sat in the quiet of his living room, the weight of Thomas's warning sinking in. He knew Brooklyn would try again, but he also knew something else. Every scheme she spun only made her look smaller, weaker, more desperate. Still, Dylan wasn't content to just sit and wait. He started documenting everything, every message, every unannounced visit, every lie she spread. If Brooklyn tried to drag him into court or ruin his reputation further, he would be ready. And sure enough, the next twist came in the form of a letter, a legal notice. Brooklyn was claiming Dylan owed her financial support because they had lived as common-law partners for years. She argued she had sacrificed her career to build their life together, that she deserved compensation now that the relationship was over. Dylan almost laughed when he read it. Brooklyn, who had never sacrificed a thing, who had drained him emotionally and financially, now wanted to paint herself as the victim. But he didn't panic. Instead, he handed the letter to his lawyer, along with the thick folder of documentation he had been compiling. Messages where she admitted to cheating, records of her moving out, statements from friends who knew the truth. When the court date came, Brooklyn arrived dressed like a grieving widow, all black and crocodile tears. She told the judge that Dylan had controlled her life, that he had forced her to depend on him, that she had no choice but to seek his support. But when Dylan's lawyer calmly presented the evidence, the texts, the bank statements, the testimonies, Brooklyn's performance crumbled. The judge's words were firm. "Miss Reynolds, your claims are unfounded. Not only will Mr. Carter not be paying you support, but you are hereby ordered to cease any further harassment or defamation." Brooklyn's face went pale. She opened her mouth to protest, but the judge silenced her with a stern look. Dylan sat quietly, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. Inside, though, he felt a rush of vindication. For the first time since that message, "I'm with someone better," he felt the scales of justice tip back in his favor. When the gavel struck, Brooklyn realized she had lost. Not just the man she once mocked, not just the home she thought she could return to, but her credibility, her power, her illusions. And Dylan? He walked out of the courtroom lighter, freer. But even then, he knew this wasn't the end. Because people like Brooklyn rarely fade gracefully. They cling, they claw, they strike back when cornered. What she didn't know was that Dylan had one final move left. A quiet plan he had been setting in motion, one that would ensure she could never hurt him again. Brooklyn's defeat in court should have been the end. Most people would have taken the warning, swallowed their pride, and moved on. But Brooklyn was not most people. Her pride was her weakness, and Dylan knew it. That's why he didn't relax completely after the judge's ruling. He continued documenting, continued preparing. He had lived with Brooklyn long enough to understand that when she felt cornered, she lashed out harder. And he was right. 2 weeks later, Dylan returned home from work to find his car keyed, long scratches gouged into the paint. On the windshield was a note scrawled in messy handwriting. "You think you won, but you'll pay." He didn't need to wonder who had done it. He filed a police report that same night, attaching it to the thick folder of evidence he had been compiling. The next incident came days later, strange packages arriving at his door. Orders he hadn't placed, expensive electronics, subscription boxes, deliveries made in his name. Brooklyn was trying to drain him financially by setting him up for fraud. Once again, Dylan documented everything. Receipts, call logs with the companies, the timestamps of deliveries. Through it all, he stayed calm. He never confronted her directly, never gave her the satisfaction of seeing him rattled. Instead, he let her weave her own noose, strand by strand. The breaking point came when Brooklyn tried to sabotage his career. Dylan's boss called him into the office one morning, a troubled expression on his face. "Dan, I got a strange email about you. Claims you've been leaking client data for money." Dylan's stomach sank. "Who sent it?" His boss sighed. "Anonymous, but we traced the IP. Guess what? It came from your ex's neighborhood." Dylan closed his eyes briefly, then handed his boss the folder he had been carrying everywhere for months. "I've been expecting something like this. Here's the documentation, texts, court records, police reports. She's been harassing me nonstop since the breakup." His boss flipped through the papers, nodding slowly. "Good? Because I trust you, Dan. And it looks like she just crossed a line she can't come back from." With his company's legal department now aware of Brooklyn's antics, Dylan's quiet plan moved into its final stage. He had never wanted to ruin her, only to free himself, but Brooklyn's relentless attacks left him no choice. He filed for a restraining order, attaching every piece of evidence he had so carefully collected: the threatening notes, the keyed car, the fraudulent deliveries, the email traced back to her neighborhood, the lies she had spread to mutual friends. When Brooklyn was served with the papers, she showed up at his door one last time. This time there was no smugness, no crocodile tears, only desperation. "Dylan, please," she begged, her voice hoarse. "Don't do this. You know I didn't mean any of it. I was just hurt. I was angry. You can't let them put this on my record. It'll ruin me." Dylan looked at her through the glass of the locked door. For a moment, he saw flashes of the woman he had once loved. The laughter, the warmth, the nights spent planning a future together. But that woman had been a mask, a performance. The reality stood before him now, manipulative, destructive, and unapologetic until consequences loomed. He spoke quietly but firmly. "You ruined yourself, Brooklyn. All I did was stop letting you drag me down with you." Her face crumpled. She slammed her fists against the glass, screaming curses, until neighbors began to peer out their windows. Finally, realizing she had lost her audience as well, she staggered away into the night. The restraining order was granted. Brooklyn was legally forbidden from contacting Dylan, approaching his home, or interfering in his work. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. For the first time in years, Dylan felt safe, truly safe. He no longer checked over his shoulder, no longer flinched when his phone buzzed. He woke up each morning knowing his life was his own again. Not a battlefield Brooklyn could invade. Months passed. Dylan flourished. He took on new projects at work, started jogging in the mornings, even reconnected with old friends he had lost touch with during the chaos of his relationship. Slowly, laughter returned to his life. Real laughter, not the forced kind he had clung to when trying to convince himself everything was fine. Brooklyn, meanwhile, faded into whispers. People stopped asking about her. The friends who had once entertained her stories began to distance themselves, realizing she thrived only on drama and destruction. Her reputation, once charming and magnetic, now carried the bitter scent of desperation. The final twist came unexpectedly, on a quiet afternoon, when Dylan stopped by the grocery store. As he loaded bags into his car, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Dylan." He turned. There was Brooklyn, thinner, paler, her once perfect hair unkempt, her eyes ringed with fatigue. She looked like a shadow of the woman who had once declared, "I'm with someone better." For a moment, Dylan braced himself for another outburst, but instead, she whispered, "I was wrong." Dylan didn't respond. "I thought I was trading up. I thought I deserved more, but all I did was burn the only bridge that mattered. And you're the only one who ever cared." Her voice cracked. "I don't expect forgiveness. I want you to know I regret it." Every part of it, Dylan studied her for a long moment. He felt no anger, no desire for revenge anymore, only a quiet pity. "I hope you learn from it, Brooklyn," he said finally, "because regret won't change the past. Only choices can change the future." Then he got into his car, started the engine, and drove away. And that was the true ending. Not dramatic, not explosive, but deeply satisfying. Because Dylan didn't just win against Brooklyn, he reclaimed himself. He proved that the best revenge isn't destroying someone else. It's refusing to let them destroy you. As I close this story, I want to leave you with this lesson. Relationships are built on trust, not control, not convenience. When someone shows you who they are through betrayal, believe them the first time. Don't waste your years waiting for change that will never come. Protect your heart, your peace, and your dignity. Because in the end, love should never feel like survival. This was Emily, your narrator here at Scars and Stories. If Dylan's story touched you, or if you've ever faced betrayal and come out stronger, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. because there are more stories of scars, survival, and the lessons they leave behind. Until next time, take care of your heart, and never forget you deserve better than someone who makes you doubt your worth.